Welcome to the Bridge Church Midweek Podcast. We exist to connect people with others and God. We hope this week's episode helps you do just that. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome again to the Bridge Church Midweek Podcast. My name is Tyler Wolf. I am the campus pastor at our Oconomowoc campus, and I'm here with Pastor Jamie Bigelow, the youth pastor at our Oconomowoc campus, and the master of all things administration pertaining to the Oconomowoc campus and the youth department, Pastor Jamie. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
It is good to be here with you. You having a good day?
Yeah, it's
Good.
going.
Tell us the best and worst part of your day right now.
Best and worst.
I saw you had a tropical smoothie for breakfast. Not
I
to answer for
did,
you.
and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, the gym was pretty nice this morning.
Yep.
Worst part was, I guess, waking up and not feeling ready to go. But otherwise, it was good.
You know, it would have been hardcore if you said the best and worst part of my day are the same thing, going to the gym. You know what I mean?
I thought about it after the fact.
You thought of it?
I did, and I went,
thought
oh
maybe.
man, that would have been funny. But
We're on the same wavelength. Well, this week's episode of the Midweek Podcast is something new. We have not done this before, but as you know, we just finished up a sermon series on Sunday mornings called Adulting. And so what we're going to do on today's short episode of the Midweek Podcast is just give a short recap of what the sermon series was all about. Maybe you sat in church and you were really touched by something that Pastor Todd taught on, or there was something that really rang a bell in your head that you want to remember. Well, this is going to be, again, a short little recap of what we went through. So, Pastor Jamie, would you give us just a quick rundown of all 5 hard truths? That's what it was. We talked about 5 difficult truths that everyone needs to realize as a part of living a full life and seeing the truth that God wants to see as grown-up Christians.
Yep. So yeah, we had 5 weeks. It was life is hard. You are not that important. Life is not about you. You are not in control, and you are going to die.
Awesome. Well, that's really depressing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. So it was 5 hard truths that we actually covered in 4 weeks.
Oh, whoops.
It was 5 truths covered in 4 weeks, because what we did was we combined the weeks you are not that important and life is not about you. So, all right, remind me what week 1 was.
So life is hard.
Yes, life is hard. So Pastor Todd covered 3 things that we need to remember about God's grace in the midst of the difficulties of life. First, God's grace produces power. God's grace provides perspective, and God's grace produces perseverance. And so Pastor Todd spent some time just talking about the pain that we experience in life, and he covered this truth that any pain that we don't transform, we will always transmit, and that it's important that we don't just let pain fester, because otherwise we will, in different ways, pass it on to others. Sometimes that's generational, where we're passing it on to children. Sometimes that's just relational to the people around us, taking whatever our pain is. But we have to see that there is purpose in our pain, and that truth is reflected on the cross, because any pain we experience, Jesus also experienced. And so my big takeaway from that message was the importance of knowing my identity in Christ. Because I know that my difficulties and my pain and struggle in life will often threaten to or try to become my identity. And so the most important thing I can do in the midst of life's trials is remember who Jesus says that I am. What about you?
Yeah, so I mean, something that Pastor Todd had said multiple times, and actually multiple people mentioned this month is, to choose your hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to choose to do the right thing sometimes, and it's going to be hard also to make the wrong choice, because that's going to lead you into a lot of trouble. So in the long run, it's better to make the right choice, even if it's difficult in that moment. And that's, being an adult means leaning on God in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I forgot that he said that, choose your hard. That was such a good point. Tell me what week 2 is about.
So week 2 is going to be on you're not that important.
And also, life is not about you, right?
And life is not about
Yes.
you. Yep.
And I love the tagline that Pastor Todd put on about that, because, Pastor Todd, he's like the nicest guy in the world. And not that this isn't true, but he wanted to make sure, and this shows his pastor heart, that everyone knew that though life is not about you and you're not that important, you are more valuable than you can possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And he quoted, I actually think, like a Messianic Jewish rabbi who said something like, every person should carry around two thoughts in their pocket, that you are nothing but dust and earth, like we're made from nothing, but also you're God's most magnificent creation. It makes you think there's this Buddhist concept that sounds really nice, but it's actually not very helpful. They call it, I think it's called like swimming in the sea of your own merit as a pathway to peace. And what they say is like at night, you should just think about all of your good deeds, and that will help you sleep better, right? And it sounds nice, but it's actually so self-centered and obviously based on you.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the gospel, is that it's the only religion and system of belief that all of it is reliant on the good work of someone else. And obviously that person is Jesus. Anything else you'd add to that week?
Yeah, I just kept having this thought. It's not about your title, it's about the position. And so kind of really going back to even what Pastor Todd had said, that it's not, having these two thoughts in your pocket of, you're super valuable, but also not.
Yeah.
And just remembering that any position that you're in, you're valued, whether that is the janitor and you feel like, oh man, people don't see me, you're valued.
Yeah.
That you're in that position for a reason. And if you're like a CEO or you're, the face of something, that you are not that important and that you were given this position by God.
Right.
And just kind of remembering that. So.
Yeah. Good point. Tell us about week 3.
Week 3 is you're not in control.
Yes. And this was a week where I preached that message live in Oconomowoc, and Pastor Todd preached a very similar message in Waukesha. So that being said, that's kind of our preaching system, is sometimes I will preach at our Waukesha campus and be on screen in Oconomowoc. The majority of the times, it's Pastor Todd on screen in Oconomowoc live in Waukesha. And then other times, it's me preaching live in Waukesha while he's live in Oconomowoc or I'm live in Oconomowoc. We're always just kind of mixing it up. And this was one of those weeks that him and I were preaching a very similar message. But there were differences, and you can find links to both those messages on our social media and on our podcast channel and, of course, our YouTube. But this week, we studied King Hezekiah and his story of hitting his rock bottom. And the two practical takeaways from the Oconomowoc message was worship and prayer. And based on the 3 truths that God is more powerful than us, smarter than us, and loving than us, my first step of surrender is worship. Whenever I'm being overly controlling of something in my life, the best first thing I can do is stop and worship God as an acknowledgement that he can control the thing I'm controlling much better than me, because again, he's more powerful, smarter, and loving than me. Second thing was prayer, because prayer is coming to the point where I end and he begins. And so I don't know what you thought about it, Jamie, but I loved in church we stopped and we prayed this part of the Serenity Prayer as a church. And Pastor Todd also preached on Hezekiah, and his bottom line was, if you attempt to run your life, you will ruin your life. Anything you would add?
So just the fact that acknowledging this really takes the pressure off of us.
Yeah.
Really, as someone who's kind of type A in that way, of like, I have to be in control of everything. And if I'm not the one doing it, something's going to fall apart. And then if I'm not succeeding, it's because I'm a terrible person.
Sure.
And so just remembering to stop and go, it's not mine. This world is yours. Worshiping him and just in prayer, surrendering. And so, it was great.
Yeah, good point. All right, last week, tell us what the final week of the Adulting Sermon Series was.
Dun, 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 dun. You are going to die.
Yes, you are going to die. That was just this past week that he taught that, and that was such a good sermon. And the overriding encouragement in the "You Are Going to Die" sermon was the encouragement to see life for what it really is, and don't see it for what it's not, and to not treat what is temporary as if it is eternal. And so he did that classic sermon illustration of where he had this long, 20-foot rope that was representing eternity. And on the very end of it, there was this tiny little part that represented our time on earth, and how easy it is to live for that tiny little part without being mindful of eternity and what comes after all of this. Because the message of the gospel is that's when real and good life truly begins. Anything else you'd add or take away from that week?
I think that the idea of you're going to die, there's so much that you can dive into. So I feel like he was really zoning in and that really great points he's already made. But I also just had the thought, just like, what are the reasons to live?
Yeah.
Your reasons to live, and then are those going to be your reasons to die?
Right.
And that's not from me. That's from a movie, from a fictional character called The Hate You Give. But I just really enjoyed that, and now I just watched it last week and going, oh, man, yeah. What are the reasons I'm here? I'm here to fulfill what the church is called for. The Great Commission of making disciples and loving people and loving Him. And if those are your reasons, you're on the right track. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. Well, that is a short recap of our adulting sermon series. All links to the full sermon series can be found on our YouTube channel as well as our Spotify channel, Apple Music, wherever it is, or Apple Podcasts, I should say, wherever it is that you find podcasts. All of our sermons are posted there every single week, so make sure you dive deeper into those. And coming up this Sunday, we start a brand new teaching series based off of the book of Nehemiah, which is very strategically placed as we just started renovations on our brand new building in Oconomowoc. And so as we look at Nehemiah's leadership over the rebuilding of the wall, we are going to be doing some rebuilding of our own at the Oconomowoc building.
Hopefully it's not as stressful.
Yeah, I hope not, right? They fought with a hammer in one hand and a sword in the other. Yeah, pretty amazing. So no matter what campus you attend, whether you're online, Oconomowoc, Waukesha, thank you so much for listening. This is Pastor Tyler.
This is Pastor Jamie.
We will see you this weekend. It's going to be a great day.
Thank you for listening. Connect with us online at bridgechurch.net. Have a great day.